And
Hey.
we're live.
Hey, hey. We have a friend today. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Hi, Jeremy. Welcome back.
Hey,
because we're worried about Christelle being consumed by flies and killer locusts.
Yes.
We've got an emergency backup with Jeremy Mark Ritch.
It's true. California is burning down, which is really sad. We have a lot happening here. We won't dwell on that too much, but we brought Jeremy in to have some interesting discussion because we enjoyed him so much and his perspective last time we had him on. And he also has a book that was just released, I think. So he'll tell us a little bit about that. Yeah. So thanks for being here. Hi, Tim.
Hi, Christelle. And let me go into our first segment, which will, because we've got Jeremy here, we're going to do the serious bit.
Nice.
And we have two topics today. It's today's World, is it Suicide Prevention Day or World Suicide Something Day?
It's not Prevention Day, I believe.
Prevention Day.
Yeah.
So I'll start with Jeremy because we brought him here. He has to go towards the end of the show at some point because unfortunate things like studying and life get in the way. What would you say is the biggest contribution that people can make to prevent suicides? Not just today, but the whole year.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it's not just one day because that would be interesting. But I think just being visible, like talking about it, being open to it, like discussing it and not seeing it as just some like horrible, selfish thing that people do, like that it's a much bigger issue than that. And that people that survive it, like that have attempted it. I've attempted suicide at a point in my life and have survived, and to tell those stories and make sure that people know that like it's not just this stereotypical person that does this. Like there's a lot of reasons for it. There's a lot of things, and there's a lot of care out there and resources. I found help through medication and through therapy and through Alcoholics Anonymous. Like all of these different things are out there for people. So that's probably the best thing you can do.
Yeah, I agree. Being visible, I think talking about things shines a light on something that for too long was hidden. And we found that when we try to hide things, it only gets worse and it only grows. And by worse, I mean, mental health needs to be talked about. Suicide needs to be talked about. It needs to be out in the open. And I think primarily, so we know we're not alone. Like Jeremy, I was suicidal at one time. I actually didn't try to take my life, but mostly because I was too scared to, honestly. The two reasons: I was too scared to, and I had kids I didn't want to leave behind. The only reason I didn't try. And so knowing that you're not alone in your worst time of depression or anxiety and having hit rock bottom, knowing that other people have gone through it, somehow it helps. And I can't quite explain why, but it helps to know when you're not alone, you're not the only one. So talking about it, there's also resources out there that I'm absolutely in love with. One is the Trevor Project, which is a suicide prevention hotline for LGBT youth. But anyone can call. Honestly, I called it one time because I felt safer in this, or I felt safe in that space. We have a national United States hotline, and you guys have in the UK, I believe, something called Samaritans.
The Samaritans is the UK equivalent.
Samaritans.
I thought it was an international body, actually. So it might be. I don't think it's just UK. It might be UK and Commonwealth. So.
Yeah, and it's important because sometimes we don't want to reach out to people we know.
Yeah. And
to have those resources there and to miss is very helpful, and also to know you're not. That's kind of my two things that comes to mind right now. And then destigmatize mental health and destigmatize getting help. For too long, it was a stigma. here in the state, especially the culture, it was a huge stigma. You were to go get help in the culture. So to destigmatize it, one of the reasons we brought on my own therapist. I mean, tell us about Tim. What help is there? What answer your own question as far as the UK perspective?
Well, it's not something I've ever sought services for suicidal things in the UK. I mean, it's one of those great things because I mean, I would say everybody's felt suicidal at some stage, but probably most people haven't. I don't know. I mean, you can only deal with your own assessment, but I know I've known people who've worked in Samaritans and been involved in that, and they're a very good resource for people in the same way as what you were saying in the US resources. I can see, given your poor internet, why maybe at times you would consider
what
it was cutting out quite a lot. But yeah, I mean, what this is to both of you, but I mean, if somebody who has no experience of like suicidal thoughts or anything, one of their friends comes to them and says, "I'm feeling suicidal," should you direct them to one of these resources, or what would you suggest to somebody in that position who hasn't got like experience in that kind of situation? What should they do to try and help their friend?
I think usually one is like really try to listen and understand the problem, because you know, because you can gauge how severe it is. Like if you're like, if you think that this person's really gonna do this like right now, then you have to get them help, you know. And there's places you can take them, you know, there's hospitals you can take them to. You know, I don't recommend like calling the police or anything like that people have done, because that just inflates the situation. As far as like if somebody's just like, I've had situations where people are like, you know, I've never had this happen because of COVID, especially now, like people have really been under a lot more stress. So they're like, I'm feeling like I've never felt like this before, and I don't know what to do. And usually what I do is I'm like, one, I ask, because it's the US, so I have to ask if they have health insurance. You know, and if they do, then I'm like, you know, you could like reach out, try to find a therapist, talk to your doctor about getting some kind of medication, like just go see somebody, you know. And usually, I mean, most of the time I've talked to people and they've actually done that. So what's frustrating is when they don't have, you know, but luckily for me, that's what happened with me, is I didn't have healthcare. So like I do now, but at the time I didn't. And I found a place that actually helped me sign up and get it, and like got me the therapy and got me medication and got me all of those things. So I have like a really good resource to point them to in the Cleveland area. But those things are really hard to find, especially if you're like, one, you don't know what you're doing, and two, you're in a place where you don't really have the mental capacity to deal with all that. So you're just like, I don't want to do this. So I think like the best thing a friend could do is assess the situation and then act accordingly, really. Like, don't make some rash decision like, you know, what are you doing? And definitely don't be like, if you kill yourself, you're going to hell, or something stupid like that, because that seems to be what a lot of people do. Or don't be selfish. And it's like, those aren't things people need to hear in those moments, you know?
Yeah. One of them, that is something I hear often, is if you're so selfish by committing suicide. The truth is that in that moment, you think you're not being selfish. You actually think that you're alleviating a burden that you might be. I can't speak for everyone, but I think often we think we're a burden and we don't want to be a burden anymore. And so that's part of the discussion to be had. That I know one of the best things that someone told me is, Christelle, you're not a burden. The other thing is, and there's a misconception, I think you'd be surprised at how many people are suicidal, but you would never know.
Yeah.
Because in wanting to not be a burden and wanting to people to think that you're always okay. I mean, I smile in front of other people. I'm jubilant in front of other people. What happens with my mental health happens alone, for the most part. For the most part, my friends who know me know that when I disappear, there's probably a problem, because suddenly you're not hearing from me. Like I shut down. So that's a big sign, I think, when people who seem to be more public disappear, and kind of knowing that. And then, to be honest, I wouldn't even know often what to look for other than that, because again, people who are suicidal, you might not know. You really might not know, in that we front a happy face. But situations might be turbulent in the home, or maybe writing interesting things. I know I get every once in a while in my DMs, if I post something on Twitter, like a Trevor Project hotline or something like that, every once in a while I'll get in my DMs, yeah, I needed to call them. That's kind of a clue to me to kind of, I'm going to check up on that person every once in a while. How are you doing?
Yeah.
Humanizing everyone, like just we're all people. We're all just friends. Check up on people might save a life. It could be as simple as that. But Jeremy's right. In your darkest moment, like you're not thinking, I want to reach out for help. You don't want to do anything but lie in bed for the most part, Well,
I don't know how, I don't know enough about suicide. And obviously, like, given the most successful people that commit suicide, you can't talk to them. You're not going to necessarily know through their brain. It could be that they think that they don't matter at all, so nobody will notice if they go, sort of thing. This is the trouble. It's like there could be all sorts of reasons why, but I think reaching out to people, as you say, is always worth doing, because they could just have some totally false view of reality, and that's what's pushing them over the edge. And it's always important to know you have got connections with other people, and they're not insignificant most of the time.
If we can start looking at everyone as significant, and I'm talking about everyone from absolutely every walk of life. When we're walking down the street and we see someone on the street, they are human. And we look them in the eye and we smile and we acknowledge their existence. That goes a long way. Jeremy, what do you think? Do you have?
I think like there's so many different reasons for suicide. There's like, and everybody's aware of it because of, either they've dealt with it personally, they've lost somebody or a celebrity that they love, committed suicide, or they watch movies that it's in. And and a lot of times it's always, I think some people's view of it is selfish, because some of the stereotypes about it are like the person who cheated on his wife, or, embezzled a bunch of money and he feels really guilty and his only way out of it is to kill himself, which is like a completely rare occurrence, I think, within the realm of suicide, where I think, within my own self, it wasn't about like other people at all. It was my disease kind of taking, because I wasn't medicated. I wasn't in treatment. It was taking over my life. And, like any disease, it'll kill you eventually. So like if you don't treat it. So in some ways, like the various mental illnesses, that's how it kills you, is through suicide. It's not like, because I think other people think that suicide's just like you have this plan and like this like when I was growing up, it was like they tell you about teen suicide, and it would be like the letter, and they had the room laid out and da 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 da, or they started giving their things away, and it's like, no, sometimes it's like you just have this mental break, and then next thing you know, you're either in the hospital because you survived, luckily, or you're not. So and with, I think in times now it's becoming more prevalent, and I think it's really been prevalent in like within like the later millennials and Generation X. It seems like a lot of, especially creative people, have been killing themselves, and I'm not really sure why that is, but I think a lot of it is like I think the younger generation has a lot more understanding of mental health than we did, and then our parents' generation, I don't know, like maybe there's a lot of suicide that we didn't even know about, because they had a really good, they were really good at just telling us like that things didn't happen, but I think within I know within myself, I can only really speak for myself. So like I just remember being so miserable. Like I couldn't, it was one of those things like no matter what somebody did, I wasn't happy. you could give me money. You could, I had a job. I was going to work every day. Like I had friends. Like I didn't have this terrible life. I just was miserable, and then after I survived what I did, it was like, holy shit, like, I can't believe, like, like I can believe I did that, but I can't believe like it got to that point and then I got help. But at the same time, it's like I have friends that have killed themselves. I unfortunately have several friends that have killed themselves over the years, whether through drug overdoses or, actual like gunshots and stuff. And I think like I have a lot of empathy for them because I know the pain that they were in. Like some of them I knew really what the pain they were in and I got it. And others, it was, it was kind of a shock, but at the same time, I was like, I get it. Like they weren't, and some of them they weren't willing to go get help. Like they didn't want to get help. They didn't believe in it, or they couldn't afford it, or, they didn't have insurance, or, or other aspects, other things were messing up their life so much that they just, so I understood it. I wish that they hadn't, but in some cases, I'm like, there was a couple friends that I had that, in hindsight now, 10 years later, I'm like, I don't know if they would have made it any longer, because of the amount of stuff that was going on in their life at that time. Like, I'm not sure how they would have gotten out of it otherwise. So it's like, I just have a different view of it. Like, I don't have this negative view necessarily, because I think everyone dies with something. And if you have an untreated illness that causes people to commit suicide, it's not going to be that surprising that it happens sometimes, And like, I think the bigger issue is like making people understand that it's not just the guy who's like on the edge of the building, because he defrauded his investors, like, or he cheated on his wife, or he, it's not just because he did something wrong, which I think a lot of people feel that's what suicide is like, oh, well, they made a choice that got them into trouble, and now they're trying to get out of it, which I think that does happen. I think people do go, I have no other way out of this, and I, in those senses, I don't know if that person was mentally ill or if they're just in a bad spot. But I think overall, it's definitely, it's tied to an illness, and any illness that can kill you. That's just one of the ways that people die. So.
I think you made a really good point, because often we look at it's suicide, but more often it's a mental illness or a mental health challenge, and that's the symptom of it. Mm-hmm. Am I wording that right? Did I word that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'm making sense, but yeah.
I think also a lot of the time it can be when people are having to deal with a new reality in their life. So if they had huge amounts of money, let's say, and then they're having to live in a bus shelter or something. I mean, certainly with my wife, after she had a stroke for a long period, she was suicidal for quite a lot of the time. But thankfully, there wasn't really anything she could do about it. Well, not thankfully, but it's been multiply paralyzed and things like that. Is obviously something that changes your life totally. You can see why people are like, oh yeah, I don't want to carry on because I like the life I had rather than the life I've got.
Yeah.
And I'm always kind of the optimistic. You never know. You're always in the game until you're not in the game. Kind of thing. But yeah, I mean,
I think that's the whole point, is that life's so fragile and unpredictable that, like, we can talk prevention all we want, but the reality is like, we don't know. You know? I mean, I could get done with this call and have like some horrible emotional breakdown, and that would be it. But I also could like go on my walk tonight and have a heart attack. So it's like, I think like there's a point where it's like, I think just being a better friend to people and being and being more open with the people that you do care about. Like, stop, if you are hurting, tell somebody. And if somebody is telling you that they're hurting, listen to them. Like, that's really all we can do. I mean, we can talk about all the programs and all the medications and all the other crap that's out there, but that doesn't help anyone until they actually do it, But the fact that, like, if somebody calls me and I'm like, I'm not picking that up because I'm watching a movie or something, like, I can pick up the phone and say, hey, what's up, instead of ignoring it, stuff like that. I think, like, we just, as people, sometimes I think we just don't care as much as we should about each other. And I think that's where we should start. I don't really know, like when people talk about solutions, I don't know if there are any. Like, I don't know, I don't know. People tend to leave us early for various reasons, and there's not much I don't think that I can necessarily prevent it, but I can at least, be more aware of it and be more vocal about my own struggle with it, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, we had something else we wanted to talk about, which is slightly more
shifting gears.
Coming on to potential solutions, possibly.
We'll put some. I'm going to highlight some of this in the comments. But Jeremy, what you said was very valuable. Thank you, and important to hear. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, I think it's I think it's good, especially on a day that we're supposed to bring it to light. It's good to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
I'm not sure about Christelle.
I want to listen. I do. I want to listen.
Has been going around the last few, I think, 5. Well, I mean, it's been going around since 13th century, I think, actually.
Yeah.
But in sort of more serious, is the conversation about universal basic income, which for anybody who doesn't know, is where the government or governments potentially pays everybody, presumably out of taxation, a basic level of minimum wage, whatever they do. Now, this is something I'm in favour of, but I'm coming at it from more a kind of entrepreneurial, like, I don't think that people should have to be forced to do sort of jobs and things just to survive when they can be more productively starting a business or doing something. But I know a lot of people, and this may be your situation, Jeremy, are more concerned about allowing people to do their artistic stuff and things like that. And that also, I think, is a valid reason. But I'm more like, there's so many people who are almost in slavery in the economy because they have to do some crappy job that they're not necessarily very good at just to make ends meet. And I think the universal basic income would really help with that. So what are your kind of opinions on the benefits or lack of it, Jeremy?
I think it's an interesting subject, and I think in America it's extremely interesting because there's like we have such a different view of like money here. It's like, because it's so tied, like our employment is tied to our healthcare, it's tied to all these different things that it isn't in other places. But I mean, I'm totally in favor of it. I think because I'm on it, like, I think there's a lot of people who are against it who say, oh, people just be lazy and they aren't going to work and blah, 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 blah. But in my experience, I know a lot of people, and I know more people on the lower end of income than I do on the higher end. And I don't know many lazy people. I know people that don't work traditional jobs or can't keep a traditional job because it's miserable, like you were saying. It's but I think everybody has something that they want to do, but they don't have the money to do it, or they don't have the freedom to do it because they're working like ridiculous hours for no money. So it's like, I consider myself a writer, and I have written books, I've published, and I've sold them. So I am a professional writer. I'm not making any money at it. But if I had if I had an income, I could write books, or I could do more outreach work, or any of the many different things I could do. Or the fact that I'm a student, I'm a full-time student, so I'm not working right now. I'm living off whatever aid I get. But if they had an income like that, I could finish my degree and not have to sweat it like every month that I'm going to be able to pay my rent, So I think those things are important. But I also think like it will inspire people to do more work, to start a business, and that's something, obviously, especially, in the corporate society that we live in, that's scary. They don't want that because they don't want people to be like, oh, they're going to start their own business instead of working for us. But I also think like, also of like people like my mom who didn't work and she raised a family, you know, that's not even considered work in the society that we live in. But, you know, there are plenty of moms that or dads or parents that can't work because they've got sick kids at home or they got other things or they can't find a job. If they had a basic income, they could still be able to do that kind of, you know, they could take care of their home, take care of their kids without having to, you know, sacrifice one or the other. So I think it's just something I think, unfortunately, most politicians, especially here, like don't agree with at all. Like they don't want. I think the only one that was really for it was Andrew Yang, who that was like his whole platform basically, and it still is. I mean, he's still extremely for it. And I think Sanders I think he's kind of on board with that kind of idea. I think AOC is definitely on board with that, but you know, I don't think Joe Biden's on board with that but he's very moderate, so I don't see that happening. But yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, but I don't actually think it's necessarily an idea of the left, so to speak.
Mm-mm.
Advocated by people on the left.
Yeah,
but,
and I think the left. I think in America, that's the problem. Is like anything that's you put universal in front of, it's a left idea. You know, it's just automatic, and it's like. I think it's a pretty moderate idea on it because it's a middle. It affects it's to help everything get better, you know. So I don't really understand why people are so against it.
I mean, it's funny in the UK that every election, the Labour Party or the left-wing party in the UK always accuse the Conservatives of wanting to sell off or close the NHS and all the rest of it. And it's like, oh, there's actually none of them saying that.
Yeah,
and because I think the real sign of a good political idea is something that's brought in and people, after a couple of years, everybody forgets about it and they just accept it.
Yeah.
That is like, it's like it took years to get a national lottery in the UK, and it was like 1993, I think it came in, and they were like, oh, it's going to make everybody go and gamble mad and all the rest of it. And like, nobody talks about getting rid of the national lottery now.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's I suspect universal basic income might be something like that. What do you think, Christelle? I suppose I should have you should have to play the anti.
I wanted to listen. I wanted to listen to hear what you have to say, and I'm wondering, Jeremy, if you have any books to recommend as well. I
mean, the only book that as far as economics was concerned, that really affected the way I looked at it. Well, a couple of books, but they're by David Graeber, who just died last week, I think, who was a very, very smart man. He was a anthropologist, actually, but he also was a kind of anarchist writer that talked a lot about capitalism, but he wrote a book called Debt: The First 5,000 Years, and it's a really good book. I mean, it's an exhaustive book. It's huge, but it kind of goes through the history of economics and how he was a big advocate of the Jubilee year of just forgiving debts, these enormous debts that don't really matter. If they forgave them, they can forgive them, and kind of get everyone back to where they need to be. But he was also a big advocate of making sure that everybody's taken care of financially with a money or a job. And he also wrote the book Bullshit Jobs, which is a really good book. And that's kind of about how all these corporate jobs that we have that everybody thinks about, the white collar jobs, are really meaningless. A lot of them really don't have much effect on the company they work for, and they don't have any fulfilling aspects for the person. And you don't go up or down, you kind of laterally move through the company. So he was saying that, a lot of people think of these blue collar jobs as the shit jobs, but they're actually providing services or building things, or where a lot of these corporate jobs really, I mean, people get paid to do very menial jobs just for whatever reason to fill a seat in the business. So it's I would say look up David Graeber's work, and unfortunately he just passed away. I believe it was just last week, which was really shocking. I don't know how he died. I have no idea. Yeah. But I would look into that. I'm trying to think if there's any others that I could think of. I mean, I think listening to what Andrew Yang has to say on that subject is really good, because I
Yeah.
think he knows his stuff on that. Like,
It's funny. Speaking of Andrew Yang, I had never heard of him, and it was actually my young 20-year-old boys who said, "We're voting for Andrew Yang. That's who we want. Mom, look him up."
Nice.
And they told me why. They started following him, told me why. This is what he believes in, and I started following him then after and reading up on what he's doing. And I'm a fan now. I hadn't heard of him. It was my boys that introduced. Yeah. So the book that I've been reading recently is called Utopia for Realists by Rutger Bregman. Have you guys heard of him? Are you a fan, Jeremy, at all?
I've never read the book.
Show here.
Oh, okay. We'll make it the hot recommendation. As soon as something got me to look right next to my chair, actually, not even knowing we were going to talk about this.
Oh, nice.
I've been reading it, actually. So the Utopia for Realists is very much about universal healthcare. There's a lot more in there. And what he does is he goes into debunk some of the myths and uses actual research and basically says, you know what, if we give, because a lot of this is like Jeremy said, people are too lazy. They're just going to be lazier if we give them money. And he debunks that and says, actually, we give money to people with the gift of letting them choose what they want to do with it, because too often it's like, but make sure you do this with it. And he said the surprising thing was most of them actually did start businesses. They started things they were passionate about. And so the whole book is a lot of debunking myths with actual research. I highly recommend Rutger. And I actually read through his whole Humankind book too. Big fan. So even on social media, follow him. But I'm still researching. I'm a big fan of universal healthcare and universal income and healthcare. Yeah. Both. Everyone should have equal opportunity. And
I think the healthcare thing is it's just ridiculous that we don't have it in the United States, because that's something that's everywhere else is people have had that for years. I mean, it's not. I don't understand how it's even an issue for us right now.
Yeah.
Like that part doesn't, and the connection to labor is insane. Like, I don't understand how healthcare and work go together. Like, that doesn't seem like it should ever have been a thing. But I think at some point the US will have to figure out something on wages, because it's just not working. I mean, the reason I went back to school is because I couldn't find a job that paid more than $10 an hour, and because of that, I didn't make enough money. So the government gave me money so I could go back to school. So it's like, I just did what was easier for me, honestly. It was like I could still be 40 something years old working at a warehouse and my body would be falling apart and I'd be miserable and mental health would be failing. Or I could live I live very simply, but I'm able to go to school, I'm able to learn, I'm able to make some money on doing whatever writing jobs or whatever I could do. And and a lot of the work I'm doing is just finding out how to get money. Researching grants, researching scholarships, and letting people know, like, you can do this. Like, because through the schools, they have right now an emergency grant, and you just apply for it, and you have to explain why you need it, but they're going to give it to you. But a lot of people won't do it. They just don't want to do the work, or they just don't know about it. So that's what I'm trying to do too, is let people know, like, you can go back to school and you can learn. And I think people, the idea that students aren't working is another issue. Like, I think being a full-time student is a job, because the whole point that the government's loaning you money or giving you is to say, okay, you're not supposed to work for 4 years. We're going to give you this money so that you can finish your education. And then, their idea is then you pay us back. Unfortunately, it costs way too much to ever pay it back. But that's a whole nother issue. It's like, why does college cost like $1 billion when it really doesn't? The textbook industry, I don't know why I didn't think to just go into the textbook industry, because it's such a ripoff and it's amazing. I mean, it's like organized crime level ridiculous.
Oh no. Let's talk about how much a textbook costs here in America. I mean, a textbook can easily be over $200.
Yeah, and then the sell back is like $5. So it's like, I mean, it's amazingly brilliant. Whoever came up with this scheme and made it legal. Like I'm like, wow. Like, I mean, there's got to be mobsters out there that are like, wow, we should have thought of that. Like, when we just do textbooks and not, sell drugs.
Yeah, because in the UK, it's or certainly universities, they did do it a bit. They were like £30 or £40 for textbooks, which would otherwise be like £5.
Yeah.
But to the like the $200.
Yeah. I mean,
they force people to have to use it, I guess, to study the course. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's now it's good. Like a lot of my English courses and stuff like that, they don't have books anymore because everything is public domain that they use, or like, I mean, I had an anthropology. That's how I found out about David Graeber. My anthropology teacher just pirated his books and gave them to us, and he was just like, "Don't tell anyone." Like, I mean, there were students that were like, "Oh my God," and I'm like, "Do you want to go out and pay $200, or just shut up and read the one that he gave us?" Like, I think like, but that's and that's like kind of a bigger issue about all this, like universal language in America is like, we fear that word like strikes fear into people because it just seems like, well, one, they see it as communism, so they're like, oh, the communists are coming, and then they're going to take over, and then we're going to be the Soviet Union in the 80s, and it's like, obviously that's not the case. The point is, and I think some of it is just like, can you guys come up with a different way to just call it something different that won't freak everybody the hell out? Like, and I think the polarization of it all is just, that's where America's made the mistake, is that we've taken things that are really pretty key issues that just need to happen and made them so politicized that like you can't really get anything done. Because like, you're not the only person from the UK I've talked to that is like, what the hell are you guys doing over there? Like, because I have friends and I have friends in the UK who are considered conservative.
Yeah.
But in America, they would be considered left because they agree with like, healthcare, or they agree with, other things, but they're still capitalists, or they're still, And I think like that's what baffles me too. Like I had some the other day just send me a message, and her message was just like, what's with the guns? And you guys and guns, like what the hell's going on? And I'm like, I don't fucking know. Like it's baffling, like how we've conducted ourselves.
Yeah. Anyway,
as the world watches on, wondering.
I'm gonna be Jeremy's dad and tell him that he's got to go and study.
Yeah.
You can't be late.
No, I have to go to my class that's taught by someone younger than me, which is always interesting.
Awesome. I kind of feel like I feel like you're going to be a professor someday. Am I right, Jeremy?
Nah. Well, that's my goal. My goal is to,
I can see it for sure.
If they don't kill me first with how much everything costs.
Yeah.
Or if I don't flee the country, which is, one of my options.
Yeah, well, you have to buy the $5,000 textbook.
Exactly. That's what I need to do, is just write a textbook that costs $5,000, and then I can retire. And be like, everything I said in that podcast is bullshit. Don't listen to it. I was not feeling myself that day.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Thanks for being here, Jeremy. We're going to back for all your expertise. So
anytime I'll come on whenever. I got plenty of free time. So just not during this time slot during the day. That's it. All my classes are between like 4:30 and 5.
Come on. So we might get you to pre-record 10-minute slots where we just play whatever is the question.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Don't be late.
Have
a good day, Jeremy.
All right.
See you guys. Thanks.
Bye-bye. Are you having a hard time seeing me? I can tell that it was very blotchy.
Well, the trouble with this is I don't know if it's my internet was playing up because Jeremy was a bit blocky at times as well.
Okay.
Or whether I think you're a little bit the blockage on, but you're right now. I can. Okay. For anybody who was wondering what the QR code in the corner is, God, it's really hard when you do everything reversed. that takes you to Jeremy's new book, which I've totally forgotten the name of. But if you bring up
oh gosh, she's a brilliant poet. I mean, it's raw. Read it. It's so good. It's like nothing you're used to. I can promise you. Very, very good.
Anyway, I didn't give any hot recommendations, did I?
You did not. I did. I gave the Utopia for Realists, and let me give one more, and then I want to hear yours. One more.
I'll work out what mine is.
So James James bought it. It's Humankind by Rutger Bregman, Dutch author. James actually bought it for me for my birthday because I kept talking about it, because technically he read it to me, but I kept telling people I read it. And so he's like, you need to have a copy of your own. So when you tell people you read it, you actually have it in your possession.
Yeah.
Brilliant book, life-changing, so good. Okay, what's your hot recommendation? I want to hear.
Well, I've been listening to the audio book of The Age of Influence, which is by Neil Schaefer. He's going to be on the show in 3 or 4 weeks, I think.
Okay.
But that's quite an interesting book. It's taking on the same topic that Amy and Caitlin were talking about, like influencer marketing. But it covers lots of stuff about that. So that's been an interesting book I'm only about 3/4 of the way through listening.
Cool.
In terms, I can't remember if I recommended this video last week, but there's a YouTube video I saw from Wendover Productions where they were talking about how the airline computer booking systems have been totally broken by COVID, in as much as they used to know basically by the hour how many people flew from a particular place to a particular place for each year. People's behavior was so predictable in general that they had all of these computer models for like how the prices were, because they never wanted the planes too full until right at the last, because they always knew there were last minute people who they could charge stupid amounts of money for. Previous people, they would have discount, and then they would have, but now apparently they're having to do all the prices manually. They've got people working because of COVID, and even going forward, they don't know if like they're going to have to wait for a couple of years to reprogram the computers with the data they had to see what the post-COVID trends are. So I thought that was an interesting kind of insight into just there's lots of things that COVID is really going to affect. I'm back on the old serious bit again now.
No, but you know what? You're right. We're not going to even know the consequences. Some of the consequences are going to be a ripple effect, and we won't even see them or be aware of it until years from now. Like you're saying, this is really setting a precedence for new things to come. And yeah, there will be consequences. You're right. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I haven't got a quiz for you this week because I forgot about it. And you told me you don't want to do the US. Well, I mean, to be honest, it was getting a bit boring. That
I gave up. I officially gave up and said I'm not doing this.
Yeah, I
was losing big time.
So we can't do that, but we have got another segment.
This segment. What are you up? Oh, this is going to be good. Okay. Do you want to go first or do you want me to?
You go first because
okay. Two things happened, I think, that I want to talk about. One, I was on Judy and Vince's podcast.
Ooh.
Which is funny because they primarily focus on food, but apparently they're venturing out into other local businesses, which is brilliant. They're shining light and kind of introducing local San Diego to businesses and restaurants, and they're just fun to chat with, amazing people. So I was on their podcast yesterday. The other thing that happened is I have a very good friend who's somewhat family, and then her good friend. We are now talking about creating a workshop together, something that has been in the back of my mind, and they've been kind of working on it. Creating a workshop together specifically for domestic abuse survivors. And we are going to meet and we're getting ready to construct it and put it into action. And I'm really excited about that. They are two very well-known San Diegans. They're not on social media per se, but they are very well-known and in the community. So I'm very excited about the potential of putting together a workshop of some sort, however it might work in the midst of not being able
to be a virtual thing, or is that
it might be virtual? We're going to talk about it next week. We have our first meeting set up, talking about it next week. I'm kind of thinking it'll be virtual, but I wouldn't be surprised if we do some kind of annual thing and go from there. But yeah, they're local San Diegans, and they are people know them, and this will be a beautiful platform to wake this up, put it in the open, and tell stories and give resources and all that. So that's what I have been up to this week. Tim, what have you been up to this week?
What have I been up to this week? It's amazing. It's like my mum, who usually rings me every day, says like, "What have you been doing?" And my mind immediately goes blank. What have I been doing? Well, I've been good in as much as I've been getting up at 6:55 every day for the last 2 weeks. I've kind of.
Can I ask you about that? Because to get into a new habit like that takes so much time. How have you been doing this? I mean, that's actually really hard to do.
Well, the funny thing is, I have done it before. Have you ever read the book *The Miracle Morning* by Hal Elrod? Because he talks about this, and I did do. I actually did that like New Year's Eve or something like that. And he talks about. I mean, he gets up at like 5 in the morning or something like that. But I don't want to go that far. But usually, ironically, going to the US buggers it up, or flying somewhere else because you have all the time zone issues. The main difference I've decided to make this time is that what would happen was that I would think I've got to go to bed early so I can get up early. But I came to the realization, certainly with me, I'm getting on now. I'm 47, and I know like my dad only needed like 5.5 hours sleep. My dad was always. I mean, my dad. I was 45 when I was born, so he was always old. Always knew my dad as being old. Yeah. But I think a lot of the trouble a lot of people have, certainly when they're older with sleep, is that they think they have to have exactly 8 hours sleep every single night. And what the problem is that you have, like, you go to bed early one day and you get 8 hours sleep, but because really your body needs 6 hours sleep, say, then the next night you end up sleeping 4 hours because you just can't go to sleep because you're not tired. And then the day afterwards, you end up drinking loads of coffee to keep your sleep away and eating loads of crap and all the rest of it to stay up. And then you end up falling asleep for like 12 hours or something. And then the next night you can only sleep for like 1 hour. Yeah. So rather than like, oh, I'm going to go to bed early, I'm like, at the moment, I'm like, I will get up at, well, originally I started with 8 o'clock. I'm going to get up at 8 o'clock and I moved it now to 6:55, which is really 7, but I do it 6:55 for reasons I don't know. I'll just pick that time. And yeah, I mean, I'll go to bed. You do tend to go to bed earlier, but I'm not like I have to go to bed at 11. I'm like, I can stay up until 1 if I want to. But I don't, you feel less pressure in a way. But the whole thing is you have to get up. You have to say, like, I have to get up this time. Even if I end up sleeping in the middle of the day or something, sometimes it's come to that. Yeah. But the real advantage to me is that I can get work done in the morning, because what will happen beforehand is if you get up at like 10 or 11, then you're so near to lunch that you're kind of like, well, I'll just do lunch. And then you're like, oh, well, I'm in the afternoon now and your morning's gone. You don't do anything. And while I am kind of able to work later on, and I used to work at night quite a lot. Yeah. You never do your best stuff at like 11 or 12 at night. There are some things you can do, like routine things you can do really easily. But I was getting into the thing where I wasn't doing any new stuff. I was just doing what I absolutely had to. So I'd do the Twitter chat and I'd do like prep for this, and I do the bare minimum because I was tired and I wasn't really in a good plan. So I'm starting to get, I'm not really there yet, but I'm starting to get more time to actually do things like work on my course, which may be released at some point in the distant future. Yeah. I finished the videos for that Phrase Express course, and I'm just working through it's one of those interesting things where I'm not sure if I'm procrastinating or if I'm just learning. So I feel I don't just want to do a course where it's just a series of videos and like, this is what you do. I want to have like, these are the examples you upload and take people through them and do them. But now I've realized that the examples I've given in the actual videos, a lot of them are stuff that I'm on my computer that I don't want to share. So I'm going to have to create different examples for people to use for that. So it's all part of the learning experience, I think, with creating courses. And I'm coming more and more to the viewpoint, even with this show, that I think people talk about repurposing content and doing stuff. I think a lot of the time you almost want to pre-purpose. You want to have in mind how you're going to be using material from something when you're actually making the show. So I haven't done it with this show, but like, if somebody says something really great at a particular point in an interview, you almost want to hit a buzzer or something and say, like, remember that time, we'll come back and we'll do it. Rather than having to rewatch and go, oh yes, Christelle said something interesting about universal basic instincts, universal basic income.
That too.
Yeah. And I'm waffling, but that's kind of what I've been doing this week. I have made progress. The main thing is I've just been waking up earlier, and I still waste a lot of time in the morning, but I do occasionally do a couple of hours of work in the morning, which is good, on stuff that isn't just, this is the stuff I have to be doing to keep going. You know, if that makes sense.
It's inspiring, because if something isn't working, then how can we fix it? And so you're inspiring me. That's one way to fix it, is to change your entire routine and change it up and start fresh. So,
well, I mean, you've got the issue, and I mean, I've been, I'm not saying been in relationships, but I've had lots of close friends in different time zones, and that can really screw up your
sleep. It does.
Sleep, because like, you will have a conversation and you feel the conversation not finished, so then you wait for them to reply and it's like 1 in the morning or something, or 3 in the morning, and that takes some discipline. But ultimately, it's like with answering the telephone. Most people will ring back if it's really important, or they use some other communication means. I mean, obviously, if somebody asks you an important question at midnight, then you might want to reply to it, or say, like, I'm going to bed now, I'll reply in the morning. Not just like, I'm asleep now.
We've had odd conversations because we had a guest on the show that was from Australia. You're awake because it works for you, but for me, it's like 2 a.m. And so we have had odd time conversations just with guests, and it gets interesting when you want to be global, I guess, and you want to get the global perspective. But
something I realized is actually poor old Fiona Lucas suffered, because time zone wise, it's a lot easier to interview Australian people on this show in the winter months, because their daylight saving is the opposite way around to ours. So I believe I think this is true, that in October there'll be, what was 5 a.m. for her would be 6 a.m. because their clocks go forward when ours go back. And in November, the UK, well, it's not going to be actually really confusing, because it might it's going to be confusing for you as well, because one of us, and I'm saying you because I host the show, is going to have to move when the UK puts its clocks back later than the US. So
I forgot about that. Yeah, I remember that. I remember that.
It was funny. I think there's only usually a week, because when I worked in corporate, I had a regular US meeting every week with the people in the US, and sometimes it was like they'd be messaging me saying like, when well, you missed the meeting. I'm like, no, it's not happened yet.
Yeah.
And it's like, but I think Australia, they have a whole month when they've got they're in a different thing, and then they move even further at the end of the month when we move, or something like that. So
I don't know if you noticed, one other thing I did this week, and I'm going to start reaching out more, is I put up a post looking for sponsors, because it would be absolutely brilliant if we find a sponsor who wants to join our mission in getting a global perspective and wants to grow with us. And I think it would be absolutely a great opportunity for a company that wants to be part of what we're doing. We're different. I mean, I think we're a little bit different in that we do get to have people around the world who come on and share a fresh perspective outside of even the UK and US. So I can put that up.
This is what kind of coming back to what we were talking about at the start of the show. And it's something I've been realizing lately is like, it's very easy to think that our perspective is everything in the universe. Because I'm like, yeah, well, I'm used to talking to people all over the world. Probably the only continent I don't talk to people on that. Well, I don't talk to that many people in Asia because of the time zone. But Africa, I have known a few people over the years in Africa, but not. I like to get more African input. Yeah. But to me, it's like, Australians, like, yeah, whatever. It's like people in Europe, yeah, whatever. I'm like, there's nothing special. But obviously, from a US perspective, it is like you don't get those other opinions as much as you should. And actually, what I wrote on the board, which you can't see.
Don't forget something. I can see. Don't forget the. I can't see. Don't forget the rest of the world. Yes.
Yeah. Which was oddly point. Oh, no, let's go. We don't want to. So yeah, I mean, you're seeing the USP when I'm just like, it's just another show. But we're not another live show. We're this live show.
We are, and and speaking of, I would love to bring in people who live in any of the Asian world or Africa. I mean, I would love more perspective. Oh gosh, it's so important to hear and to know we are not the only people on this planet. It's so important to know other perspectives are valid and it comes from a certain place. And you're right. In America, we tend to not think that way. So I appreciate that. So anyways, we're looking for sponsors. That was something that's going to be a project.
Have you any companies that you don't want us? When arms manufacturers we probably don't want to.
No, absolutely not. Of course, no. We're not. No.
I'll probably get CBD manufacturer like cannabis oil or something that probably gets kicked off YouTube. So
I don't know how that works. I'd actually be open to it. I guess it would be a discussion between you and I because it might affect coming on. But I guess we have on probably would be open to it. I would be open to it. It's something we probably want to discuss.
Yeah. So no arms manufacturers.
Absolutely not.
Satanists. Church of Satan. You probably don't want any religious organization.
No religions, no. I mean, authors, companies. I think we'd be surprised what companies would want to sponsor something that is global. One of my job at Traveling Stories was partnerships. I was the director of partnerships and outreach, and it is fantastic to find those partners who want to grow with you and be part of the vision. And with that, they get to put their voice in. They get to have some influence there. So it was cool.
Probably be like Acme garbage trucks or something, and we'll be like, if anybody's looking for a garbage truck,
that's why not? Why not? I'm open. Are you open? That's
just as long as you give us your money, we'll promote it for you.
We have vision. We want more voices. We want to be able to. I need more lighting. I need better lighting. I mean, that would be helpful, so that people want to into that
and stuff, isn't it? So
Well, to be the best you can be, so that people are able to listen better and pay attention and actually be part of this discussion. That's kind of my. It was brilliant having Jeremy on. Thanks for asking him.
We had one comment from Jennifer Gilmer who said good evening. I put up, but
hi Jennifer. I know she likes to pop in. I didn't get to catch her in home because we were talking about I think actually mental health at that point. So
we managed it. We do get replay viewers. I mean, this is always something that like lots of live show people forget about, but people do watch the videos, and people can watch it on YouTube. So if you happen to have one of these YouTube enabled TVs, you can go and subscribe to this show on YouTube. Just search for "Oh No, Not Another Live Show," and at some point I will get a QR code because I love QR codes now.
That's rad. And we're going live on Twitter. Don't forget.
Oh yeah, I need to set up the Twitter account. I did promise you to do that, and I set it in my task list now. But I'm way behind in my tasks, and that's only because I've been lazy, really, as much as anything. But yeah, I was going to do it on Wednesday, but then as I run a Twitter chat, I didn't want to accidentally end up doing the Twitter chat from that account or something.
Oh, yeah.
So, and it's actually, I think it's easier to set up a new Twitter account on mobile phone. I was looking on the Twitter app; it's quite weird. So yeah, we will be experimenting. So, who's going to be the guest on Tuesday then? Who
is our guest on Tuesday? I was going to ask you. I'm forgetting. Is it our ADHD?
No. Well, let me check actually before I say this. It's going to be a double header because I am going to be on your How Deep Can You Go show.
Oh, Marie. Is it Marie? Okay.
Yeah. And it's Marie. This is Lapointe or Lapointe?
Lapointe. Yeah. Okay. So, we're gonna have a global discussion on Monday. So Marie is from Canada, and Tim is coming on. You didn't know that? She's actually Canadian. Yeah. I think she moved to America. I think she moved to America 10 years ago, something like that. She hasn't been here that long. So you're coming on our show tomorrow.
Yes.
7 a.m. But for you, it's what, 3 p.m.
Oh, is it 3 p.m.?
8 is 4, 7 is 3. Yeah.
It's 3 p.m. Yeah. Oh, I thought it was 4 p.m. That's good.
Yeah, 3 p.m. You're coming on our show. We're going to talk about something deep. We don't know quite what yet. And then she's coming on our show. Yay, that'll be fun.
So hopefully I won't piss you off too much tomorrow.
You can piss off.
Well, I suppose if we did it could be an interesting show on Tuesday anyway. So
piss us off. It'll be good. It's good for us. We need all perspectives. All right, Tim, thank you.
And let me not bugger up the outro. What do I have to do for the outro? I just have to play the. Oh no, I need to put something up because I always like the whole tell people how the sausage is made kind of thing. I have to put up something like this because if I don't put up something like that, what happens is that you at the end of the thing, I press end broadcast, and then you've got us looking like what? So I have to put this up first, and then I play the outro music, and then it mutes us, and then it's the end of the show. So, oh yeah, that's the right one. So,
I'm just smiling.
I have to scroll for ages to do this. So anyway, goodbye everybody, and catch us on Tuesday when it's the second part of me interviewing Marie. Well, they'll be interviewing me tomorrow, so catch it on their show, and we'll be interviewing Christelle's co-host on Tuesday, I think. Anyway, goodbye everybody.
This is terrifying for me.
I've made more money in the last 3 years than I did in the previous 7.
Cliche shit, you know.